Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good night, everyone. My name is Adam Cortez Davis, and today I would like to present my material after I read about translation and interpretation. So first, let's talk about translation. So translation, everyone has heard about it, right? Translation. Now, what does it actually mean? So translation actually means when an original text is being replaced by a text that has been changed to a different language. It depends to which translation it is. So, for example, it's a Spanish translation. The original text would be replaced by a Spanish version of this original text. Now, that is translation. Translation has very many uses back in the day. For example, first it started, translation was the purpose of to spread the national language of a country, or when for religious uses it was very useful as well. For example, in Islam, because the religion was from Arabic, and then Islam really kind of migrated to the whole world, and then people would read to know the Quran. Probably the same with the Bible. When it started with Latin words, people would need to translate it, for example, to English or whatever. There were many purposes back in the day for translation. So it was not new. It was found a long time ago, and it was used for a long time ago as well. Now, but translation translation is not only done by humans, it could also be done by computer as well. So computer translation is actually really fast. It's faster than humans. So a person like me, for example, I want to translate, for example, because I live in Indonesia, so I would like to translate from Indonesia to English. So I would put my Indonesian text to a computer translated base, and then it would immediately translate to English. But that's the problem, because it's doing it in a fast rate. That means the text would be translated, but it wouldn't be translated perfectly. Some words would be mistranslated, and the grammar might be wrong, and it might make kind of not that much sense in a way. But that's why normally after a text is being translated by a computer, normally the human translator would immediately edit the version of that to make it a perfect translated text. Now, but although being said, that kind of seems useless or just gives errors, but these computer-based translations could be very useful for many reasons. So, for example, scientists would find translated computer versions more likable, because for example, if they want to find specific words that they want to translate to a certain type of language, it would be easier for them because it would be fast and will only be one single word, rather than focusing on the grammar would be wrong. No, if they only want to find one or two phrases, most of the times it would be right, and it would be easier as well because it will be done in a much faster rate rather than doing it by a human version translation. And the computer-based translation would give more reference to more words, so it would give more word choices rather than the human translation, which could be boring with more repetition of words. Those are one of the advantages of computer translations. Now, those were about translation. Now I'm going to interpretation. Now, interpretation is the same as translation, but it's just more of the oral version or the spoken version. Now, rather than text, okay? So, I'm sorry, pardon me. So, interpretation has actually been going on for a long time as well, but there's no really evidence about that because it's more of word to mouth rather than documents where we could actually trace them. Now, interpretation was kind of found when people would kind of travel to the world, and when they would go to different countries that spoke different languages, people would kind of communicate with hand signals because they both spoke different languages. And there were some people that could speak both languages, and yeah, due to the reason of maybe they lived close to each other borders, or they had different parents, or whatever reasons. So they were bilingual back then. and they could speak, and they could actually translate the person that traveled to the country. So those were interpreters, the first interpreters, I suppose. And nowadays it's pretty normal to have like a bilingual person. Back in the day, that's when it first started. Now, there are three different types of like professional interpreters, I suppose. So the first one is conference interpreter. Now, a conference interpreter is a very high and prestige interpreter. I think it's the highest level of interpretation because it is used in formal meetings and conferences all over the world with different languages, so they could speak different languages in the meeting to translate their country's language to another language. And then there's I forgot the name, but there's this second one. This is when, for example, someone is giving a speech and on TV, for example, or whatever, and then the interpreter would start translating it in his head or in their head, and they would speak the translated version immediately. So for example, I'm gonna try it in how do I say it? So I'm not gonna explain it, but I'm trying to explain it in English. So, for example, we speak. For example, the speech is done by Indonesian language, and then the interpreter would be the English version of the language, and they would hear the first, for example, first two sentences, and he would start to talk in the English version, and then he would wait for the other two sentences. So it's done by head, and normally they are giving a mic and a headphone so they could hear clearly and start translating immediately. And then there's a third one, I forgot the name as well, but that is almost the same as the second one, but it's different because normally they would wait till the original language speaker would give their speech, and then he would write it down while the speaker was speaking, and then when it's all done, the interpreters would immediately start translating it and would read the text version that they wrote. But it would be really time consuming if you compare it to the second one. But the second one would be more higher level of major mistakes occurred. And I think that's it for my material about translation and interpretation. If you guys have any comments about me, please comment, and thank you for watching. Bye bye.